Welcome to another Ember Weekend. I'm Jonathan Jackson.
And I'm Chase McCarthy.
And we, together, he and I, and the community, are Ember Weekend. And we're here to talk about newsy things and Ember-related stuff. Today we're going to be talking mostly about SOEmber, which is the San Diego conference that Chase and I both just recently attended. And I'm really excited.
So, this isn't the weekend, though. Like, we're not actually recording this time.
Yeah, how did we, yeah, this is super weird. We release on not the weekend, and normally we record on the weekend, so our name kind of makes sense.
So we should release on Saturday now.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good call. Yeah, we'll have to release on the weekend so that it actually makes sense.
We'll call it Ember Weekday. Like, we'll get a different...
Ember Weekday. That's pretty good. That's good. I like it. So anyways, all kidding aside, let's dive in. We got some really cool stuff to talk about. All right, so the first talk we're going to talk about is the one that Mike North gave, and he's talking primarily about Ember Glue, what he considers Ember Glue. And I took two things away from this. One, he very accurately, I think, captured how most apps in the JavaScript space are created, and that includes Backbone and React and all these other ones, as basically being patchwork quilts of apps where each patch is a different portion of the framework and of your own architecture, not so much a framework. And you're basically filling each patch with the thing that you think is right, and they move at different paces, and they're effective. I mean, a patchwork quilt's very warm, but it's not necessarily cohesive, and it's not necessarily going to age at the same rate, or I guess I don't know if this metaphor is actually working anymore, but repaired at the same rate. I don't know. I don't even know. But there's a lot of different friction there. So one of the cool things about Ember is that it has kind of a cohesive solution. So once you learn the stuff, you can apply it elsewhere. And there's a bunch of other ways that different portions of the tech stack kind of interrelate. And with Ember, that usually makes sense because it's community driven. So it's really interesting. And then once he started talking about the actual Ember Glue, the things that connect all of the different pieces, he started talking about things like registry versus container and the initializers versus instance initializers. You know, I talked about initializers in my talk, and I cannot say that word. It's a problem.
Right. Yeah, it's like instance initializers.
Instance initializer.
They should have just called it initializers and then anything else.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a tongue twister. But anyways, he had a lot of really keen insight on how to debug these things and how to gain insight into your code and maybe follow a little bit of the internal Ember code. I think he abbreviated a lot of it for brevity and also for the sake of not showing too much private API. And he heavily caveated that it was private API. But it was a really interesting talk. I really like those deep dives where you can kind of explore a little bit more and get a little more visibility into the underpinnings of Ember, not just the top level stuff that we see day to day.
Yeah, and he was basically saying that, everybody should have this skill, that your number one, tactic of like either copy paste from Stack Overflow or ask a question in Slack is not the first place you should start. I mean, it's definitely an option. But it's like you need to be able to follow a stack or follow, step through the code and kind of figure it out because that'll give you a lot of intuition about how Ember works. It'll, it's fun. It actually, I mean, everybody calls it spelunking or something, and it's that doesn't sound fun. That's like the deep dark cave. But it's kind of like looking around, seeing how everything's put together. It really does help you get a feel for how it was intended to be used. You see a lot of great comments too, like people write these really huge comments with really good stories. So
yeah,
it's like an adventure.
It's like an adventure, and I think that's kind of the thing that he left us with, was basically saying that even if it doesn't necessarily improve the application you're currently working on, it might make sense to every once in a while spend 20 or 30 minutes just going on an adventure and just following the frames until you'll learn something. You'll take something away that will help you down the road, and just make it a habit. Every week or every couple days or whatever you can manage with your time. Just go and take a look at the internals and see what's going on, and it will probably make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was a neat talk. We're going to post that and all of the talks from SOEmber once they're up and running.
And the next talk up was from Melanie Sumner. And I had never met her. So this was the reason that I went to the San Diego conference, is that I thought, I get to meet a bunch of new people And she was really interesting. She was from Chase Bank, which is apparently this was I guess the first time that was like public, that Chase Bank was doing Ember development. And so what she does though is she does the accessibility side of that. I don't know if she's just like bringing down the hammer on people or if she's doing the code. But she was super knowledgeable about how all this stuff kind of fits together. The one thing I thought she was really trying to express was like, whose job is it? And basically the answer is it's everybody's job. Like at every single level, somebody has to think about it. It's not something that you can just say, well, the designers didn't put ARIA roles in the markup, so I'm just a developer. I just copied and put the dynamic stuff in place. And it's not just the developer's job, and it's not just the project manager's job, and it's not just the it's everybody has kind of a responsibility in it. So I thought that was really cool. And she also said it needed leadership. So the leadership had to be on board with allocating the time, enforcing that it's happening, doing some QA testing and things like that. So I thought that was a really good message.
Yeah, I totally agree. And she pointed out specific use cases around plugging in Ember A11Y testing, which kind of gives you some warnings about places where you might have issues. And then honestly, like really sensible advice, like, hey, just tab through your app and like, can you do the things that you want to do without a mouse? I feel like that's a really good first step. And I think there's a lot more. There's a lot more that needs to be done. But I really enjoyed this talk. I think it was very insightful. And I think that I'm going to be installing Ember A11Y testing in some apps pretty soon.
And the next talk up, which I think happened was it right before the break? I think was Daniel Chappell. So. Yeah, and he literally said in this talk, because it's like a really in-depth talk and could be a little boring, is what he was basically trying to get at. It's all Haskell, and he's like, if you feel like you're not going to understand anything, just you can go to the break early. No one did though. Yeah. So
I left really hard at several of his jokes. Actually, they were really funny.
Yeah, he probably had, especially because it was in the morning. He got a lot of good laughs and I think helped wake some people up.
Totally.
And so so his talk was basically on Haskell, but kind of not, kind of on TypeScript, but kind of not. It was really weird. It was the Haskell influence, which is, I guess, type safety, purely functional, a lot of weird words like monad and functor, and what was the other one he used? It was like
applicative or
applicative, or something like that.
Applicative, yeah.
And and so a lot of terminology. He tried to explain it. I tried to follow, but I still don't know what a monad is.
Yeah, so my main takeaway here was that this is all really, really interesting stuff. I had not heard of the word functor before, and I feel like that, I've heard the word before, but I didn't really understand it in the context. So he did that, and he walked us through some really cool examples of kind of leveraging some of this stuff in your JavaScript code, which I thought was really neat. And I think his talk is one I'm most looking forward to going into on video, so that I can spend a little bit more time kind of basically studying his slides to get caught up. But it was really great. And I think my main takeaway was that monads are hard, but they're worth investigating. That was kind of my main thing.
The one thing it did is it got me really interested in trying TypeScript, specifically in Ember. And then I realized that TypeScript doesn't work very well in Ember. Like the story for it's not very complete. It's kind of, the add-on that does it's kind of old. Yeah. I mean, there are people who are really interested in it. So I'm super interested in at least playing around with it. So yeah, so it was really interesting. I'm definitely interested in seeing how TypeScript plays well with Ember or doesn't.
Yeah, totally. I need to just buy some books and sit down and try to learn some of the signatures, because I was writing some TypeScript over the weekend, and I had to look up basically everything, like how do you set default options, and how do you destructure and then also set default arguments. That's, I don't know. It's just a little bit of a minefield for me personally. I just need to spend some time diving into it, but it definitely seems really interesting, and I think you get some really good information that you otherwise would you're kind of throwing it away. So I'm excited about it. I don't know if I'm eager to go out and write it tomorrow. I'm much more fluent in JavaScript, but it's interesting. But yeah, Daniel's talk was great, and I'm really excited to review that myself. So, all right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Trent Willis's talk, and his talk was on engines, but very specifically lazy engines, and he walked through each feature of the engine development, and then each feature of engine development came with an RFC attached to it. So there's just like 6 RFCs that went through where, you know, LinkedIn and Trent and Nathan and Robert and all these people were working on these RFCs to basically kind of flesh out the patterns so that all of the engine work would be shareable. So it was a really awesome story when you start thinking about just the massive effort that was done. And then not only is that effort like captured so that it can be reused by other people in the community, but it was like standardized and went through comment periods and things. It's really interesting to see like Ember's OSS model kind of like work like on a big scale. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the changes seem just so like on the surface, you're like, oh, that'd be trivial, or you know, like why is there an RFC for this? And you're like, well, they break some compatibility in like a weird place. So the one example he gave was that query params, normally if you have default query params, they actually get stripped from the URL, and he was saying that in this case they can't be, because you don't know what the default query params are, because if you have a lazy loaded engine, all you have is like the route name. You don't have the actual route object. You don't have the controller, and the controller is where those default query params live. So you can generate a URL for a controller, or for a route and controller combination that you don't have yet. So you have no idea when you generate that URL what it's supposed to look like. And there's a couple other problems specifically with URL generation that had RFCs attached for them, and they're all about like, you know, really thinking about how to either preserve backward compatibility or weigh, in this case, what's the risk of just not stripping that query parameter. It was very minimal. Like, I don't think it shouldn't affect anyone's app. Yeah, and specifically, you know, when they did this, they would like do a GitHub search, and they would say, are any of these projects we're seeing using this function in this way? And if it wasn't, then they felt confident in, you know, at least putting together the RFC and kind of like moving forward. But they're still asking for input. So it's amazing, you know, how much work and thought went into it.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that some of those RFCs, like engines are ostensibly like done, like more or less. But some of those RFCs are still unmerged because there's, you know, they still want feedback, and they still want some fluidity to make sure that they can make changes they need. But yeah, like I said, the effort here was huge and super interesting, and I think we're only just now tapping into the potential here. So I'm really excited about that. And this was a great talk. He had some really awesome. I was as he was giving his talk, I was kind of like rapidly like doing double checks and triple checks of my talk, and I was really impressed by his transitions. He had a bunch of really cool keynote transitions at the beginning of his talk. So I don't know why that's the thing that like comes to mind, but it was good.
Oh yeah, that stuff it's really hard to get right, and
it's hard to get right. It's also like hard to stop. Like once you start, you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this thing? Or oh, wait a second, I can do this other thing. So
right, just get all your slides together first, and then add those, because you will waste forever on like one slide. I did it. I did an animation of like, you know, it was like telling a story, and I remember that one slide took like 3 days. To make.
Yeah.
And then you get to go to change something, and you're like, oh well, you know, that's all gone. But yeah, totally. Super impressed.
Yeah, it was really good. So anyways, look forward to that. And if you're ever feeling like you're interested in engine work, those RFCs, some of them are still open. And even if they're closed or merged, it's still worthwhile to go in there and kind of investigate those RFCs. Really good comments and discussions. So check it out.
And the next talk was by Miguel Andrade or Cobain. I'm not really sure which one it is. It's actually Andrade. He really likes he's really into music, and he likes Kurt Cobain. So I actually called him Cobain, and they're like, no, that's just a joke. Like, he just does that. So yeah, his talk was about how to use Ember without DOM. So how to use, I guess he's using a lot of Glimmer features to use Ember as basically just a composing framework where what you're composing isn't necessarily DOM. The examples he gave were interesting. They're like map-like libraries. And the first one was a JavaScript library. So you're like, okay, well, you're not doing a DOM, but you're still interacting with JavaScript. So like the gap, didn't seem that impressive. But then the next part, and this was like, I was hoping he was going to do this, because I've run into this same like desire to do this with Ember, and then like just falling flat on my face. He started rendering 3D with it. Specifically, I think he was using Oh, he was using WebGL. I'm not sure what library it was, but it was super impressive. He had button overlays over the top of this 3D scene, and everything was data bound. So like the rotation of the galaxy was data bound to something in Ember. The rotation of the planets were all data bound. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, the entire time, like after the talks were all done and we were out getting food, I was just trying to make a joke. I was trying to figure out some way to make a joke about how he's the only one who can now make an apple pie from scratch because he first created the universe, and it took me like a while. I don't think I ever landed it. It's bad. Anyways, yeah, this talk was really, really good. He did mention there was one caveat to the whole thing, was that even though there's no DOM being written, there's still text nodes being written. So the DOM is still involved in order to do some like bookkeeping on Ember side. I don't think that that's necessarily like a permanent problem, but it's a thing that if you wanted to use this for, say, a video game or something like that, you'd have to take into account, and likely there would be some performance considerations. So. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but like this was great, and I actually liked the map one. I know you kind of like I feel like you were much more blown away by the OpenGL thing, but I thought the map example was really cool too.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that was really great. It was all data bound, and he had some sliders and stuff down below where he's changing some values outside of the map, and
Yeah.
because of Ember, all of that was adjusting markers and polygons being drawn, and where the zoom level of the map, all of that was controlled externally, and that was pretty good.
Right. Yeah. But this was a great talk, and Miguel's really cool. I got to hang out with him a little bit afterwards, and it was really great getting to talk to him. Really excited to see the potential here to other applications, not just necessarily OpenGL like graphic stuff, but also like more things like Ember Leaflet, just seeing how it works. I also think that part of what made Ember Leaflet possible was Ember Wormhole, which is a thing that kept getting brought up like as this like very important piece of like code that is used across a bunch of add-ons that do really cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself reaching for it pretty often now, but usually I have to get it. I have to reach for it when the UI is somehow disconnected, and every time it always feels like there's a problem. Like the reason I'm having to use it is because the UI is not structured right. So specifically, like you'll have a form, and that form will be like wrapped in some other component. And you're like, oh yeah, this is very hierarchical, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, there's a button way down here, and that controls that form way up there, and you're like, ah.
Yep, definitely. And there's a bunch of really cool stuff in other cool stuff in Miguel's talk. So look forward to that one. I'm pretty sure the Planet Universe thing demo is actually open source, so you can probably play around with it if you're interested. But yeah, definitely look forward to checking that out.
Yeah.
And then there was my talk, which I talked about Fastboot, and we'll link to the episode where I yammer about Fastboot for like 25 minutes in the show notes. And if you're interested, you should definitely reach out to me and let me know what you think about Fastboot and your use cases and stuff like that, and we'll talk.
So yeah, we just talked a lot about Luke for Ember Wormhole, and he was also the closing keynote speaker. And it was really interesting because he had a leg brace on from his injury doing parkour. So that was super impressive that he got up on stage and was walking around in this conference like injured. So that was pretty nice. I had a ton of empathy for that, which is
a ton of empathy. Nice.
Which is actually what his talk was about. And he was given basically free reign to just talk about whatever. And what he chose to talk about was just about having empathy, just for each other, for another developer, somebody who's going to, come on the project later. Sometimes there's an easy way to get something done, and sometimes there's the way that's maintainable, that's kind of fair to the next person that's going to be taking over your job. So yeah, it was a good lesson, I think.
I totally agree. And I really liked that he had free reign to do whatever he wanted and chose to give a talk that touched on broader subjects than just the technology that we use. I thought that was really great. One of the things I thought was pretty excellent was his explanation of what he called Shu Ha Ri, which apparently comes from, I want to say he said Martin Fowler, I want to say, was the one who kind of brought the idea around into the software world anyways. And it's the idea of the pursuit of a mastery of a thing, and at each stage you kind of move across different expectations. So in the Shu phase, you just do things that you're told. And in the ha phase, you can kind of expand a little bit more. In the re phase, you're an expert and you're going to be discovering and improvising. And if you're in any of those stages in mastery and you try to go to another stage before you're ready, or you try to go back to a stage that you've already been to, you're going to be really frustrated. So if you're in this improvisational stage where you're really trying to push the boundaries of a space, I think he used Torin's Ember Redux as an example. Then you can't go back to just doing what you're told, like in the shoe phase. And I don't know, like it's more complicated than I'm giving it credit for, like in a good way. Like it's more dynamic of a concept. But I think it's really about trying to think about the pursuit of mastery and how you can help people at each stage and what each stage means. I think, for instance, he said that the shoe phase, which is the authoritative master of the shoe, would be the Ember.js learning team. So the de facto thing that everyone should follow should be, when they're in that phase, should be the stuff that the learning team creates, which I thought was really cool, because if we all kind of get behind that idea, that means that we're all going to be coming from a specific point of learning, which is good, I think, in that phase. Everyone's going to have a lot of similar knowledge and nomenclature and experience coming that way. So I don't know. I thought that was a really interesting insight into things. I've heard things that are related to this that have like 5 steps of mastery. I don't remember the name of it. I just talked about this over the weekend. Anyways, but it's a similar concept. But I think Luke really knocked the talk out of the park, and it was really cool to listen.
Yeah, and he had some really good stories about him as a young developer. Driving Yehuda Cats to this meetup and stuff, like when it was still Sprout Core. Yeah, it was a really emotional talk. So when that comes up, we'll put it up. You should watch it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a fantastic keynote for sure. And with that, I think we've kind of talked about all the talks. So that was San Diego Ember Conf, and I had a blast. I really loved it. It was a one-day conference, which was kind of great. I really liked that it was one day, one track. I got to talk to pretty much everybody. If I didn't get to talk to you, should and you want to talk fast boot or something, just reach out to me on Slack. But I had a great time. It was super fun. We partied afterwards. It was a good time.
Yeah, and that venue was just, it was probably the best conference venue I've ever been to.
Yeah,
it was like everything
great.
Was dealt with, and the conference organizers were talking about everything. Like the staff there was like very proactive with like, hey, it's a little windy outside. You want us to move everything inside? And everything was like just handled. And and it was just gorgeous. So, and it was a great day too. So that helped.
Yep, totally. And thanks. As a side note, I spoke here, and I want to just say thanks to Heather and Brian for putting all the work in, and all the people at Dockyard who did just a phenomenal job at the conference. It was a real fun treat, and I'm looking forward to seeing them and all of our friends again in just a couple months for EmberConf.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and that's gonna be it for this Ember weekend. And thanks for listening through to the end. And if you have any questions or concerns or comments, just reach out to us on Twitter at Ember Weekend, all one word. Or you can follow along with our podcast with your podcast reader of choice at emberweekend.com/feed.xml. I'm Jonathan Jackson.
And I'm Chase McCarthy.
And we will see you next week.
Woot woot.